So we're starting section 2.3 now, and that's going to be drawing histograms, frequency polygons, and ogives. All right. Remember, we always have a essential question that we want to focus on throughout this entire unit, not just this video or just this section. And this question is, how can we present data better? All right. So that's our goal, and that's what we want to figure out, continually figure out to answer this question more in depth than just a basic answer. All right. And you're going to see that this section is a continuation from section 2.2 with our frequency distribution. It's because we need to present the data in that form first before we can go ahead and create any of these different visualizations, a histogram, frequency, polygon, ogives, amongst others as well. So it's important for us to write the data out first as a frequency distribution, and then from there we can decide, well, which one do we think will work best to show to the reader clearly what's going on, or which one do we want to use. All right, so we're going to first in this section, or this today for this section, we're going to break this up in a couple days, and we're going to this video is going to focus on histograms, and then the next video is going to focus on polygons, and that will be in the one day, and then the second day of this lesson we'll go over that ogives. All right, and we're going to break it up like that because frequency, polygons, and histograms are extremely similar. Except for a few different details. Right now, in order for us to do this, we need to first have a frequency distribution. So we're going to use this frequency distribution here that we created in the last class. So this problem was the one that was talking about the record high temperatures for all 50 states in the US. So we already created this frequency distribution. There's no reason for us to do this again. Now we're going to use this table or this frequency distribution to go ahead and create a histogram, and then we'll create our frequency polygon. All right, so let's get started on the histogram. Now, when we're creating a histogram, the first thing that you want to do is you want to create an X and a Y axis. All right, so here's my Y axis, and here is my, back down. Sorry about that. Here is my Y axis. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to create an X and a Y axis. And then we're going to label these. So we'll label this X, and we'll label this up here, we'll label this Y. All right, and then we need to know what we're going to put on both our X and our Y axis. Our X axis, let me move this down a little bit. Our X axis is going to be our class boundaries. And I'll explain why we're using our class boundaries after we create it. So that's why we have to make this, because it's very important for our histograms. And then our Y axis is going to be our frequency. All right, so that's what we're always going to use for our Y axis. That's what we're always going to use for our X axis. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and label all of our class boundaries. So we're going to start with our first one of 99.5. And then we're just going to go ahead and list every single one out, 104.9, 109.5, and so on. So let's list this out now. All right, so now we went and labeled our x-axis with all of our class boundaries. And now we need to go ahead and list all of our y-axis with our frequencies. Now we can't just say that this is going to be 1, and this will be 7, this will be 8, 13, 18, etc. This here, we start with our first class boundary, but all of these points are uniform distance apart. So when we create our y-axis, we need to go ahead and create uniform distance between all those as well. And we don't want to just count by ones, because then that means we have to create 18 tick marks. So you can create or use any distance you want between each one. If you want to create 6, 12, 18, that's fine, but then it's going to be hard for you to graph 1s, 2s, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label these each by 2. All right, so I went ahead and labeled my y-axis by 2. You don't have to use 2. You could have did 3 if you wanted to, so it's less tick marks. It's really up to you. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw all of these histograms, which is just going to be a vertical bar at each of these points. So our vertical bar starts with our beginning boundary, and its height is going to be our frequency. So the first one has a height of 2. And then the end part of our vertical bar ends at the second class boundary. All right, so then our next histogram will start at this class boundary, and it's going to go, and our frequency is 8, so then we draw it up as a vertical height of 8, and then our bar is the same width as our class boundary. So our histograms are all vertical bars, and the vertical bar has a width of our class boundary and the height of our frequency. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the rest of these histograms now, the rest of the bars for our histogram now. All right, so now this is our histogram. So each bar is the width of our class boundary, and its height is the frequency. Some graphs you might see will color these in. I won't force you to color that in, but you will need to draw these lines and separate our bars. Now, the reason why we use our class boundaries and not our class limits is because we don't want any space between these histograms. Unless there's no data in this part here, let's say that this had a frequency of 0, then there would be a space between these two because we can't help it. But we don't want space between our histograms. And if we used our class limits, then there would be a gap between each one of these histograms because this one would end at 104 and the green one would start at 105. So that's why we use our class boundaries here. All right, so that is all we're doing for this video. There's one more for today, and that's going to be drawing our frequency polygons. You're going to see it's very similar in the way that we're presenting this, and both of these are slightly different, or they are different than the ogive, and we'll discuss and go over that after we go over that video the next class. All right, so that's it for this video, and one more for today.